So in this video, we're just going to be taking a look at Chrome extensions, specifically Manifest version 3, and how to build one. How do you fundamentally build a Chrome extension Manifest version 3? And so in the beginning, I'm just going to go over the basic 5 components. We have the manifest, the background, the options, the pop-up, and the foreground. And through the middle, we're going to go through each individual component, what to write, why to write it, and through the end of the video, now that we have all the components written out, how do they communicate with one another? And so throughout this video, we're going to be building a very basic Chrome extension to guide you along that. If we go to the Google homepage like this, we're just inserting a form on top. So hello, Jack. Let's change that to John. We write John in the little input field here, and there's some logic running in the background. We click the change name, and we have hello, John. We click left click on the browser icon. We have the pop-up page, hello, John. We right click, go to the options with the options page, hello, John. And so if you stick with this video, I promise you'll have an extremely very good grasp of how do Chrome extensions work, specifically Manifest version 3. And so if this interests you at all, be sure to follow us on the socials. That's the Twitter and the Instagram. We do daily posts, as well as informing you guys on what's happening with the channel, videos coming down the pipeline. And so with all of that said, let's begin. All right, so we're going to start off by, I'm going to show you the 5 basic components or main components to building a Chrome extension. We're going to go over them basically, and then we're going to go in depth individually, one by one, how each one works. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how does each component communicate with the other components. And then throughout the video, in order to explain or better visualize how a Chrome extension works, we're just going to be building a very basic Chrome extension. Some input on the front end, and the back end just saves the data. And so to start off, not all these components are required. And so if you try and load up your Chrome extension without the first component, which is required, the other 4 aren't, but if you don't have the other 4 or a combination of the other 4, then your Chrome extension won't do anything. So the most required, the primary file you need is manifest.json. It is a JSON file, and you can think of it like your ledger. This tells your browser what's the name of your Chrome extension. And again, we'll come back to this and we'll fill it out later. What's the name? What's the description? What's the version number? What does your Chrome extension want to do to the user's browsing experience? And what domains, if you'll see later on when we fill it out, what domains does it want to do that stuff to? So think of it like your ledger or the brains of your Chrome extension. So this file is required. If you try and load up your Chrome extension without it, like this, so Chrome :/extensions. And so we load the unpacked, and we go to the desktop, we go to the work, we go to the Chrome extension, we'll get an error. It needs some form of some data in here, name, description, stuff like that. So you get an error there. Let me just pin this guy because I'm going to show you some components. This is a different Chrome extension that I built like last week. All right, so that's the main file that you absolutely need. The second file is the background.js. Now, developing a Chrome extension is a lot like, well, I like to think of it, it's a lot like developing a full stack web app. There's the idea of the front end, or the stuff that the user interacts with, and the back end. That's where you handle a lot of the business logic, the programming stuff. The background script is like that. It's like the hub of your Chrome extension. You do all the heavy lifting in this JavaScript. It's just a JavaScript script. Well, there's some unique properties. It's a service worker. When we get into doing actual code in here, I'll explain that. So that's the background script. It acts in or stays in the back end of the background to handle the programming logic. The next file, new file, let's go with so it's going to go with the foreground script to mirror the back end and front end, but the foreground script is the most complicated component. So let's do the easy ones first. So the next one, or the third one, is the popup.html. It's just a regular HTML page like this, regular HTML. And the user sees this when they left click this icon. So if they left click this, all of this is just an HTML page. Same with the options page, or options, options, HTML. Same thing, just an HTML page. That's what you see when you right click this browser icon and you go to the options page right here. I'm the options. So just HTML, regular HTML page. So that is, let me remove this because we're going to build our own. So that's number 1, that's number 2. We did the pop-up, the options, and the foreground script. Now, basically, how should I explain this? We have to inject the foreground script into the tab the user's viewing in order to get something done on the UI or the UX of the page they're viewing. But the foreground script is just a JavaScript script. But we can inject that JavaScript script into the page the user's viewing, and because we have our own script into that page, we can manipulate the DOM. You'll see when we actually build or use the foreground script. So that's the foreground. It's better if I show you rather than tell you. So those are 5 main components of a Chrome extension. You have the manifest, which is required. You have the background, which is not required, the pop-up, the options, and foreground, which are not required. But if you don't have any of these files, then your Chrome extension basically does nothing. All right, so that's the main 5. Let's go one by one and fill these guys out. Let me just do Control S here, Control S here. All right, so for the manifest, there's a lot of properties here. We're just going to deal with the basic ones. So name, let's say, I don't know, Chrome extension. Let's say MV3. We have the description, and let's say building a Chrome extension, MV3, and then we have the version. So the version right here, we handle that. And so let's say we uploaded it to the Chrome Web Store. You could go 0. This is major, that's minor, and that's patch right there. So let's do 0.1.0. And so if you updated your Chrome extension and re-uploaded the updated Chrome extension onto the Chrome Store, you'd be responsible for managing the version. So maybe like a major release would be 1.0.0. We're just going to stick with 0. It doesn't really matter. We're going to stick with the 0.1.0 like this. Now the version that you do not have control over, you don't get to pick whatever number you want, is manifest version. Basically, what software version is the Chrome extension? We have 2 and 3. For this video, we're doing 3. So that's the manifest version, and then let's start defining the icons. And so icons is an object, and these icons will define this. These icons, when you go to Chrome://extensions, these are the icons that show up, or the images that show up. For this Chrome extension, what do I have? I just have this, an object, and we have 4 different versions, 16 by 16, 32, 48, and 128. So let's fill those guys out right here. So 16, and that's going to be in ./images/icon, right? Icon, what is it? Icon-16 by 16.png. And let's copy 32, 48, 128. This is going to be the 32 version, 32 and 32. This is going to be the 48. This is going to be 48. This is going to be 48 as well. And then finally 128. And 28 and 128. Delete. So those are the icons. Let's define where to find the other files. So let's start in the order I showed you. The background. So background, it's going to be an object. We're going to say service worker, and we're just going to say ./background.js. And then we'll do the pop-up. The pop-up is defined in the action. It's an object. And 2 properties here. The default pop-up. And that's going to be where? ./popup.html. And then you have the icons for the pop-up. You can have different icons for the icons that show up in the Chrome://extensions, or in the little, that's what I forgot. You guys can't see my cursor too well. Let me turn this part on. Program files, let's go to the cursor highlighter. There we go. So in the top right, that's where the default icons are for the pop-up. We're just going to copy the same guys. So default icons, object, we'll copy these guys, and we'll paste these guys down here. There we go. So that's the pop-up. Let's define the options page. So options, plural page, and it's just going to be what? ./options.html, and then let's define we have the manifest background. The foreground we could define here, but I'm going to show you a bit more of an involved way. We're going to inject it manually through programming into the front end. You'll see when we do that. So we have the background, we have the pop-up, we have the options page. Let's do the permissions. So all the permissions is what does your Chrome extension want to do to the user's experience? So permissions, and then what pages do you want to do those permissions to? This should be an array like that. And then we have host permissions. So just because we ask permission from the user through the browser to do something to their browsing experience doesn't mean we have access to the tabs, the tabs or the specific domains that they're using. So for this video, we're just going to need the active tab. All that is when they click on an active tab like this, or the tab that's active, we get to see what's on their page. So it's active tab. We're also going to need the tab And all these guys are like APIs. You can go to the Chrome extension docs, and there's an API listing. You can see what they do. So we have the active tab. We need the tabs. So just because we have access to this tab right here, the active tab, doesn't mean we have access to these guys. These are not active, so we don't have access to those. So we need the tabs API. Close this. Tabs API, and we need to store stuff on the local hard drive of the user. So we need the storage API or storage permissions, and finally the scripting. This allows us to inject CSS and JavaScript into the user's page. So those are the four we're going to be dealing with in this video. We have the active tab, we have the tabs, and we have the storage and scripting. Now again, just because we're requesting these permissions doesn't mean we can do stuff to the page the user is viewing. Let's say this looks like Google's homepage. It's not. It's just a new tab in the browser. And so it's a local URL. It's like this. It's not an HTTP URL. So let's go to the actual Google site like this. Just because we can actively see what site they're on doesn't mean we can do stuff to it. We need the permission to work specifically with this host right here, or this domain. So that's where we get the host permissions. So for this video, we'll do the Google homepage, google.com. Now, if you didn't know or you wanted to work on any URL the user was viewing, you could do a catch-all like this, all URLs, or you could do something like this. So this is the protocol, HTTP or HTTPS://. This is the domain, and like a URI. That'd be the same as this guy right here. All URLs, all URLs. For this video, we're just gonna be working with the Google website. So that's a basic manifest. Again, there's a lot of properties, like 20 plus more properties. These are the very basic ones: name, description, version, manifest version, icons. We have the background, we have the action or the pop-up. We have the options page, permissions, and the host permissions. So if we save this and load the Chrome extension, we should be good to go. So we're going to go to the load unpacked. What's this? Desktop work. This is the one. Select this folder. We've got some errors, probably some spelling error. Google, oh, of course. So in your host permissions, you need so we have the protocol, which is the HTTPS. We have the domain. We also need to specify the URI. Catch-all would be star like that. Let me save this. Let's go back. Let's remove this. Remove, load unpacked, and select this folder. There we go. So we have our Chrome extension uploaded. Let's work with the background script. And so one of the major changes between Manifest version 2 and Manifest version 3 is that the background script in Manifest version 3, which is what we're working on, it's a service worker. If you don't know what service workers are, I did a video, I think it's like a 25-minute video. I'll have a link in the description box below if you're watching on YouTube, a card in the top right. All service workers, basically, it's a file that runs when it's needed, and when it's not needed, it actually deactivates. So in the old Manifest version 2, let's say we had this. We're going to be working with a name variable for this video. So we had a name like this in Manifest version 2. And the Chrome extension was doing something on the, I don't know, maybe the pop-up page or the options or the foreground. When it came back to the background, you'd still have this name variable there because the script was persistent. In Manifest version 3, if your Chrome extension is working with these other files, past a certain time, I don't know what that time is, but if you're not working with the background script, it actually deactivates. So you lose all of the state of your background. And so in order to get persistent state in a service worker, we need to save it on the local hard drive. That's where the storage, this guy right here, that's where the storage API came in. So a service worker has different lifecycle methods. The first lifecycle is always the installed. So when your service worker first loads up, it goes through that installed method. When you don't use the service worker, it deactivates. When you use the service worker, it doesn't install again, it activates. So the oninstalled, chrome.runtime. Was uninstalled, this gets done once. And we'll do an add listener. You can think of it like, let's say you installed Warzone or your video game, and then you went to the uninstalled add listener, and you went to the key bindings. There'd be a bunch of default key bindings. That's where you would define this stuff here. This is the default state of your Chrome extension. For this video, we're just gonna have a default state of name, and we're gonna give it like Jack or something. So to save stuff to the user's hard drive, Chrome, storage API, local, set. We're just gonna set it's an object, takes an object, name property, Jack. So if this were a video game and you loaded it up for the first time, you went to your character selection screen, the default name would be Jack. And again, this runs only once. If they uninstall like this, if they uninstall the Chrome extension and reinstall, this runs again. So every time you have a fresh install, this guy runs. So default name's Jack, and to get stuff out of the storage, it's Chrome storage.local.get, and this accepts a string, which is the property name you're trying to get. Or if you have more than one property in there, you can have something like this, an array of strings, something like give me name, and then if you had age, give me age, and then it gives you that in a data, a callback like that. But we only have one, so we don't need an array, so let me just get the name like that. We'll come back to this when we talk communication. So it's basically for the background. It's a service worker. It's not persistent. If you want data or state to save beyond the deactivating stage of your service worker, you have to save it on the local hard drive. That's one of the main differences between Manifest version 3 and Manifest version 2. So we'll come back to the background when we're talking communication. For now, let me just save this. And let's move on to the pop-up page. All right, so pop-up page is just a normal HTML page. So let me just do, what should I do? Let's go with, for this video, we're gonna have a div, and let me just say hello. And for now, we're just gonna say name like that. Save. If we go back here, refresh the extension, and we click on let's pin the extension. We left click, there we go, hello name. Let's modify this with some styling. And so in your pop-up and your options, what you cannot do is this. You can't do inline JavaScript like you would a regular HTML file. You can only link your JavaScript like this. Script source, let me see, // we'll say pop-up. This is pop-up, right? Yeah. Script.js, we'll make these files in a second. But what you can do is inline style sheets, or you can link it like this. For this video, we're gonna do inline. So let's do this. Let's go the body, give me the body. We'll do a width of, let's see, 250 pixels, a height of 500. Let's do a background color of red. Let's modify the font, move the cursor. Font, we'll do a color of white. Let's do a font size of, I don't know, 30 pixels. And let's make sure everything's centered in the screen. So let's do a display of flex. We'll do a flex direction of column. Let's do a justify content center. That should be along the y-axis, align items, x-axis center as well. Let's see what we got. So go here, refresh the extension, left click, hello, name. There we go. Let me create these files, the pop-up script and the options script. I'm going to mimic the pop-up and the options. They're going to do the exact same thing. So let me just do a pop-up underscore script.js. And that reminds me, I have to show you guys where to get the developer console for each one so you guys can debug your code properly. Options, plural, yeah, script.js. Let's close this guy. Let's open the options. Let's delete all this. Let's go to the pop-up. Control A, copy, Control V. Hello, name's good. Let's change the script it's using. Options, and let's change some of these properties. It's going to be a full pager, so let's do this. 100 viewport width and 100 viewport height. VH. Display, I can stay the same, and let's increase the name. Let's go to 80 for that. So the options again, you just, right click in options. So refresh, right click, options, hello name. Let's get rid of these scroll bars for this one. And this is the options HTML. That would be overflow hidden. All right, so let me just show you very quickly where you get the developer consoles, the console logs. So for your background script, refresh, it's just this guy right here. You go to Chrome://extensions, and why don't I do this? Background, let's just do this. Console.log, I am the background. There we go. Let's open the options script, pop-up script, console.log, I am the pop-up. There we go. And for the options, console.log, I am the options. Foreground's a bit different. We'll get to it when we get to it. So let me close. We refresh. We click the service worker little link right here. And we get the I am. Let me increase that. There we go. I am the background. That's the background scripts console or developer console. Sources, network performance. For the options or the pop-up, left click, right click, inspect. I am the pop-up, there we go. And why did it do that? And pop-up. Yeah. Why is it spitting out the, there we go, F5, and it gives me the pop-up. We right click, we go to options, right click, inspect, and we get I am the options as well. All right, so let me delete this. Let's go to the options, delete that, save. Okay, let me delete this as well. So that would be, I showed you the manifest, I showed you the background, the pop-up, the options. You have to link scripts. You can't do inline JavaScript. You can do inline CSS. Let's get to the most complicated one, which is the foreground.js. So let me just do this. Let's go console.log, and I am the foreground.js. All right, so we could, but I'm not going to do in this video, we could inject the foreground script into the user's page through the manifest file, like hard coding it. But we're going to do it programmatically. So what we need to do is two things. The second thing is inject. But the first thing is we need to monitor what the user is doing with their tabs. And when they're on, for this video, when they're on the Google homepage, this is not the Google homepage, this is the new tab. When they actually navigate to google.com, we want to inject our foreground script into Google's homepage. And that gives us access to Google's homepage. So how do we do that? How do we monitor what the user's doing with their browsing experience? So in the background, we do a listener. So we're going to say chrome.tabs, which is that tabs API from the manifest. This guy right here, that's tabs. And we're going to say on updated. Now on updated listens for different life cycles of loading a page. We get a callback with 3 different arguments. The first argument is the tab ID that the user is loading or viewing. The second is change info, which is it gives you updates on the life cycle of that tab. And then we have the actual tab info, things like the URL and stuff like that. So let me print those out so you guys can see it. Console.log, the tab ID. Tab ID, change info, and the tab. I'm going to change info and the tab. Control S. Now pay attention to how many times this guy spits out. We have console log, console log, console log. That's 3 console logs. We go back here. Refresh, and this is spitting out in the background. So open up the background's console right here, service worker. And let's do left side, right side. Left side, right side, left side, right side. All right, refresh. You close this, give me the service worker. And so let's go here. Now, this is spitting out some data. I'll tell you why this is wrong in a second. Let me just do Control L. Let's go to the actual Google page. And look at that. And so right here, we have lines 12, 13, and 14 spitting out stuff to the console. We have 12, 13, 14, 12, 13, 14, 12, 13, 14, 12, da. Why is it spitting it out like 4 times, 12 times? Well, this guy listens to all of the you could say, sections of the life cycle. And so in the change info, which is the line 13, we start with a status of loading, and then we load some favicon URLs. We have a title, we have a loading, and then finally we have a complete. And so for every single one of the cycles or sections of the cycle, it's spitting out this console. Now watch what happens if we do this. How do we then inject our script? So let's delete this. Let's close this window right here. We do a chrome.scripting, which is this API right here. That's scripting right there. Chrome.scripting, would it be Chrome runtime scripting? No, Chrome scripting execute script. So let's inject a script. The first parameter is an argument is an object with a target. Where do you want to inject this? Well, we want to inject through a tab ID. And what tab ID? Well, the current one that they're loading, which comes from here, right here. Tab ID, like there. The second property is, what do you want to inject into that tab? Well, that's going to be a files, and you can have an array of different files. For now, we're just going to have the ./foreground.js. I think it's an array. It should be an array. So the second argument is, what do you want to do after you've successfully injected? Well, let's just console.log something. And actually, that reminds me. So the old manifest version 2 is written like, it's not really written like this, but it is a callback. So manifest version 2 was a callback. Manifest version 3 is moving towards promises. So let's use the updated signature, function signature for this. So instead of the callback, we're just going to use a promise. Pretty simple. That dot then, and there we go. So after we're done, and we'll do it dot catch just to be good programmers. So after we're done successfully, console.log there. After we're done successfully injecting the foreground, we're just going to spit out a message, console.log. Let's do capitals. Injected the foreground script like that. So we're watching what the user's doing, and then we're just injecting the foreground script into the user's page that they're actively spitting up. Let's go here. Let's do left side, right side. Let me close this. Refresh. Give me this right here. And new tab. Again, I'll tell you what this is in a second. Let's Control L that. Let's go to the actual Google homepage. And we get injected the foreground script, but look how many times we injected. 5 times. So we injected once for every little section of that lifecycle. You don't want to do this because it would mean that if you had some sensitive logic in your foreground script, which is this guy right here, we just have console.log. But let's say we had sensitive logic, it would run that logic 5 times and probably screw something up. So we only want to inject the foreground script once the page is done loading. How do we know when the page is done loading? Well, we have that change info property. So here, before we inject, we're going to check the change info. If change info.status is equal to complete, then inject the complete, then inject the JavaScript. So let me do this. Delete, paste, format, save, go back. Let's close this, and give me this, and new tab. I'll get to this in one moment. Let's go to Google's homepage. And we should get 1 injected the foreground. So there we go. So what is this error right here? Well, like I said, this is not the Google homepage. This is my new tab page. You can have different new tab pages, different search engines or custom new tab pages. So the URL for this guy is a local URL like that. You can't inject foreground scripts into this URL. It has to be HTTP or HTTPS. So in addition to, where are we? In addition to checking the status, if it's complete, we're going to check that the URL is HTTP or HTTPS. I'm going to use a regular expression for that. So we're just going to say and. We're going to do a .test, and we're testing the tab.url like that. And we're just going to make sure that the beginning of the string, which is a caret, with the caret, there we go, begins with HTTP. So that covers HTTP and HTTPS. So if the change status is complete, which means the tab is fully loaded and they're on an actual website, then inject the foreground script. So let's do Control S. Let's do a refresh, and we should not get this error when we do a new tab like this. There we go. And let's go to the Google web page, and there we go, injected once. So now that our foreground script is successfully injecting into the user's page, we can manipulate the page. So let me right click this. Let's go inspect their logo. Let's do a right click on this. Let's do a copy. Let's do a copy JS path. And let's go back to our foreground script. So we know that this foreground script is going to be on Google's homepage. And on Google's homepage, there's their logo. So we know that this will work. Capture the logo. We'll do style. We'll do transition. Duration. Let's say 3 seconds. Yeah, let's say 2 like that. And copy paste and style. We'll do a transform. ANSFORM. And let's do a rotation of like 1,000 degrees. Rotation 1,000 degrees like that. Control save. We go back, close, refresh, open new tab. Go to Google's homepage, and we get that effect right. No, we don't. Why didn't it? Rotate, console. Where are we at? Rotation. Sorry, not rotation. Rotate. Should work when we do this. That should be an E, and so that should be rotate. We'll save. We'll go back here, close this, refresh, go to Google's homepage, and there we go. We get their logo rotating like that. So now that we have their script or our script embedded in their homepage, we can also inject HTML. So I'm going to inject a little form on their page, and then after that, I'll have this whole system set up to where I can show you guys how these files start communicating with one another. So let me close this. Let's delete these 2 lines, and it's just a simple, it's going to show the name, hi or hello name. There's going to be an input field and then just a button or a div that we're going to click, and it's going to change the name for the user in the background on your Chrome extension as well as the front end. So for the foreground, the options and the pop-up. So to do that, we're going to inject some CSS as well as the script. For now, let's just lay out the HTML. So we're going to have a container. We'll call it the CE, Chrome extension. We'll call it main container. And we're going to do document. And we'll say create element, and we want a div for this guy. For the name that gets displayed, we'll do CE name, also a div. And we'll give these guys IDs in a second so we can grab them from the script. The name, we're going to need the input, and we're going to need a button. I tried doing a button like this, but the Google homepage has default styles for buttons, so it screwed it up. So we're just going to make a div, and we're going to make it clickable. So div, and this guy should be an input like this. All right, so main container, name, let's go with the input, and we'll say let's call it button, but it's a div. All right, so the main container, let's append these guys first, and then we'll work on the stylings. So CE main container, append child, we'll put in the CE name first, input button, name, input, and button like that. And we'll append all of this to the users or the Google homepage. So the Google homepage would be document, query selector, and the body of the page that this is embedded on, which is Google's homepage. Append child, just append the main container like that. So let's give some attributes to these guys. Let's start off with class names. Yeah, we'll give a class name. So CE main container, class list, .add, and then let's just say CE underscore main like that. For the rest, we're just going to do IDs. So CE name.id is equal to, and we'll just say CE name like that. And CE input.id is equal to CE input, and finally the button. CE button.id is equal to CE button like that. All right, got the and let's start styling with the style sheet. Let's just see if it embeds first. So refresh, let's go to Google's homepage, and let's right click, let's inspect, and we appended it to the end of the body, so it should be right down here. There's our custom HTML, the main, the name, the input, and the button. You can't see it because we need to style it. So let's start doing that. Let's open up a new file, and we're just going to call it the foreground styles. You can call it whatever you want, main styles, whatever. Foreground styles, and let me just do a left and right type thing so I can see what we're working with. All right, so I'm going to do this kind of blind, so if you're not good at visualizing your HTML, just trust me, it'll work. So that main container, which is going to be the CE, what did you say, CE main, which is a class, right? Yeah, so it's not CE main, it's going to have all of the elements. We want a red square on screen with all of the elements stacked on top of one another. So let's start with a width. Let's go 400 pixels. Let's do a height of 500. We'll do 600 pixels. 600px. Let's do a background color of red. Let's fix the font, so color of white. Let's do a font size of, let's say, 70 pixels. And let's center everything in a column. So display flex. We'll do a flex direction of a column. Justify content, that's a y-axis. We'll do space evenly. And align items, which is X, we'll do center. And we'll make sure it's on top of everything on that page. So display of absolute. Absolute. And we'll do a top of 50%. Let me move my cursor. Top of 50%, left of 50%, and we'll do a transform. Translate, -50%, -50%. And make sure the z-axis is on top of everything. So let's go with 9999999. There we go. Width, height, display, top, looks good. Let's see what we got. So close this, refresh, go to Google's homepage. We should have a red box. And we don't, why not? Inspect, console elements right here. CE main, font size, font family, div class CE main. Did I misspell it? Oh, I didn't inject it, excuse me. So let's inject it first. So we inject JavaScript like this. It's much the same for injecting CSS. So same thing, Chrome scripting, instead of execute CSS, we have, what do we do? Insert CSS, but same properties, CSS, like this. Let's copy these two, paste, target, and this is going to be foreground script.css. And did I name it CSS? I did, foreground styles. That's script, excuse me. Styles.css, Control S. We have the return of the promise. We don't want to do anything with the res. But once the CSS is inserted, then we'll insert the script, right? Or should we do script and CSS? No, CSS and script. So let's copy all of this, paste it in here. Let's take the catch away from this, the inner promise, outer promise. So listen for what the user is doing with the tab. Once the tab's fully loaded and they're on an actual website, insert the CSS. Upon inserting the CSS successfully, insert the JavaScript. Once we inject the JavaScript successfully, just go inject the foreground script. Should I have a comment here? Yeah, let's be consistent. Copy this, paste this. Injected the foreground styles. STYLS, there we go. Control S, let's go back. All right, so go refresh. Let's go to the Google homepage, turn off the caps lock. There we go, the red. And I didn't position it properly. Why is that? Foreground styles. Width, display, position. This should be position, excuse me. Display, there we go. Refresh, go back. Google.com, center of the page, there we go. So let's write in the hello name and let's design the button. This is what they're going to use to enter a name, which change this name right here. So right here, let's do close this. Let's go left side, right side. There we go. Let me get some space here. All right, so CE main for the name before we append it. Let me do this. CE underscore name dot inner HTML is equal to, and we'll just say hello. And this is going to be a variable, but for now we're just going to say hello name like that. And for the button, CE underscore button dot inner HTML is just going to be equal to change name. Let's say change name like that. And so for the styles for this, let's go with the CE name, which was an ID. So CE underscore name. Let's say font size. We already had it here. So let me take this guy. We don't need it for these guys right here. That's the font size for the CE name. Let's go with the input. We don't need any stylings for that. For the button, CE underscore button. And for the button, let's do a color of, let's do a background color of black. And so we need black on red. Yeah, that'll be good. Let's say a border radius of, I don't know, 5 pixels. Make sure we can click on it, or we can visually click on it. So cursor pointer. And that should be good. Padding, no, we'll keep it simple. That's the name, that's the button, CE name, CE buttons, Control S, close, refresh, go back to the Google homepage, and we go hello name, and this is our button. Let's increase the size of this button. It's kind of ridiculous. Let's do a width of 200 pixels and a height of 150. And we'll just do a padding of like 10 pixels. See if that looks better. Save, and the font color needs to be white. Put it here. Font size. Let's do font size. Doesn't need to be that large. Let's do a font size of, what's the other one? 70. Let's do 30 for this. Save, go back, close, refresh. Let's go back to the Google homepage. There we go. Hello name. And I'll fix this text in a second. Change name. This is the button here. For this, instead of a width and height, let's take away the width and height and we'll just do by padding. Let's go 100 on the top, and for the left and right, we'll do 70 pixels. Save, go back, and then we get to the communication part. Refresh, Google, there we go, change name, and let me just change that. Let's go down to 80, and this guy down to like 30, or let's go 60. There we go. All right, so we have the stuff on screen, hello name, which we're going to change programmatically, a place to enter the name, and then the button. So let's talk communication. Let me close this. Let's close this. Let's close this. And communication. So like I said in the intro, you can think of Chrome extension development like a background or back-end front end. So right now we're going to have the front end communicating with the back end, so sending messages to the back end, and I'll show you how the back end sends messages to the front end. So let me just do a sort of window view so it's better to conceptualize. So this is going to be the back end. And the front end, we'll start with the pop-up script, the options, and we'll have the foreground. But let's do this. Let's go here, close this. We'll do the options right here, and we'll do the foreground right here. So the guy, or the windows, or the scripts, the components on the right, are going to send messages to the component on the left, the back end. This is the back end, this is the front end. So how do we communicate? Well, there's two ways of communicating. If we send a message like this, chrome.runtime.sendMessage, this runtime sends a generic message to the background, the pop-up, and the options. Whichever one captures it first, I think this is the way it is. Whichever one captures it first, that's the one that deals with the runtime send message. There's another chrome.tabs.sendMessage. This is only used to send messages to the foreground scripts. So runtime sends a generic message out to the background, the pop-up, and the options. The tabs.sendMessage sends messages to specific tabs, or the foreground script. So right now we're just going to send a message to the background using runtime. We're going to send that message through pop-up, options, and foreground. And then when I show you how the back end shoots messages to the front end, we're just going to send a message using the tabs API to the foreground. So let me close or delete these. And all we're going to do is we're just going to get the name. So we're going to send a message when the pop-up script opens, or the pop-up page opens. It runs the script every single time. We're going to send a message to the back end. Well, again, the options and the pop-up in the background, they all get this message, but the background is going to be the only component listening for the runtime messages. So Chrome runtime send message. The first argument is what do you want? What's the message you want to send? And the second argument is what do you want to do with the response to that message? So we're going to send a message called, we'll say, get name. It doesn't have to be an object. It can be directly to something like this. It can just be get name like that. But I like to do objects because there's usually a payload that comes with the object or the message. So messages like this, get name, and then you can give the message some data with a payload like this, and this would be like a variable with the payload. For now, we're just doing a get name. So get name, that's the first. Let me get the cursor out of the way, and let me just do this so it's easier to see. So we're sending a message of get name. The second argument is what do you want to do with the response to your message? Well, if the response dot message, when we send a message back, if response, and again, we could, when we send the message or the response back, we could send a string called success, but I like to send objects with different properties. So if the property in the response dot message is equal to success, that means the background script successfully got the name from the local storage and sent it back. So if response dot message is equal to success, we're just going to change the name on the popup.html, which is just right here. This div right here, we're going to capture it, and we're just going to change the name, hello name. So we're just going to do document.query selector, and that was the div, the only div on the page, and we're just going to do inner HTML, and we're just going to say hello, and we're going to send that name in the payload. So it's going to be the response.payload like that. So we can copy this logic, paste it in the option script, copy this logic, paste it in the foreground script right here. Control V for this guy, same thing, div, right? You're holding your name where? In your div, so that's good to go. And you're holding your name in this ce.name. So we have to change this guy right here. This document.query selector, we don't need this div. We need CE name, inner HTML, hello, and the response.payload. And so we're sending a message to the backend. Let's receive that message. So you Control S here, Control S here. All right, so you receive messages in like a communication tree. So instead of chrome.runtime.on or send message, we have chrome.runtime.on message.add listener. Now any of these files, these front end files, they can also have message listeners. So first argument is, I think it's the only argument, it gives you the request coming in. So what's the message coming in? The second argument is the sender, so who's sending it. And the third is the ability, it's a method, the ability to send a response to the sender of that message. So in here, we just do a tree, an if-else tree. So if the request coming in dot message, because we have it in an object right here, message is equal to get name, then we're just going to get the name from the storage and send it as a response. So to get the name from the storage, do I have that? Yeah, right here. So let me copy this or cut this. We'll paste it in here. And the data.name is the name we have in the storage. So all we're going to do is a send response of, and we'll say it's expecting. What are we expecting here? We're expecting a response.message of success, and then in the payload, the actual name. So give me a message of success, and then we have the payload, which is just going to be equal to the data.name. Now there's two things wrong with this. Once we get we query the local storage, it doesn't mean we automatically get the data. We need to check if there's an error. So if there's an error getting the data, Chrome throws an exception or an error or whatever. Chrome, I think it was chrome.runtime.last error. So if there's an error getting the data, we're just going to do a send response of message fail. And because we're expecting message success here, right here, these guys won't run. So message fail if we get an error, and then we're just going to return out of this. I don't know if it automatically returns out of the block with the send response, but just in case, we're just going to return. Now, if we don't trigger this error, we just send a message of success with the data.name. And there's one more error here. And so when you send a message to a specific component or any of these components, it opens up a temporary communication line. Chrome expects you to send a response right away. So if we ran this right now, we'd probably get an error because this right here, this Chrome storage local, it's asynchronous. It takes time to fetch the data from the storage. In that time, the communication line would already be closed. So in order to tell Chrome, keep the communication line open until I'm done, I'm ready to send a response, in your Chrome runtime on message, you have to return a true within each block like this. So get name, we'll do it here. So returning a true. So this will run asynchronous. This goes off into like a separate process to run. And then it runs this return true, which says to the Chrome extension, there's some asynchronous coding happening. Wait until I give my send response and then close the communication line. So if you want to do any sort of asynchronous programming in your on-message ad listeners, you need to return a true to keep the communication line open. So let's save this. We have name, data. And remember, the default name is Jack. So you should be getting hello Jack on the pop-up script, the options, and the foreground. So we go back here, we refresh, and let's try the pop-up. So left click, hello Jack, perfect. Let's right click, go to options, hello Jack, perfect. Let's go to the Google webpage, our home page, and we get hello Jack like that. So that's how we communicate between components. When you do a runtime send message, it sends it to the background, the pop-up, and the options. Whichever one's communication tree catches it first, that's the one that deals with it. And now I'm going to show you how do we send a message from the back end to the front end here using the chrome.tabs. And then I'll show you when we do something like this. We click the change name. We're going to send the new name from here to the background. Background's going to save it, and then we're going to show it right here. But before that, let's send a message from the back end to the front end. And so right here, we insert the CSS, and then we insert the JavaScript. After we successfully, let me do Control B, there we go. So after we successfully insert the JavaScript, we're just going to change the name. We're going to send a message to the foreground saying change your name. So let's do this. Chrome.tabs.send message. And so what's the two arguments? Where do you want to send I think it's 3 arguments or 2? I think it's 2 arguments. Send response, no 3, I think it is. Where do you want to send this message? Just because we can send to tabs, which tab? Let's say they had 1 million tabs open. Which tab do you want to send it to? Well, we want to send it to the one that they just activated our little script on. And so what's the tab ID of that tab? Well, that comes in right here. That's the tab ID here. So the first argument is which tab do you want to send your message to? Tab ID. Second is what's the message? We'll say message will be change change your name or change name. We'll just say change name like that. And we'll say payload is going to be equal to John, like that. And what do I want to do with response? We're not going to send a response back. That response works exactly like this response right here. When you do chrome.runtime, send message, you get response, you can do whatever. You can do the same thing with tabs. We're not going to do anything with that. So let's close that, or get rid of that response. So inject the CSS, inject the JavaScript, and then once the JavaScript's on their page and then all the elements are on page, send a message to the foreground script saying change your name to John. So let's get rid of this runtime send message, or just comment it out, and let's copy this communication tree. So copy this communication tree, yank, we'll paste it in the foreground script, and let me do this. I'm done with the pop-up, done with the options. And let's do this. There we go. So in the foreground script, we have our own communication tree. We're looking for a change name, not get name. So when we get change name, all we want to do is change the name. If request message change name, we'll copy this line right here, paste that bad boy there, format, and it will be in the request.payload, not the response. So CAW request.payload. So we should get, when we inject the foreground, go to Google's homepage, we should get hello, what did I say? Payload, John, instead of hello, Jack. So save, go back, let's go refresh, Google homepage, and hello name, we don't get that. Why aren't we getting that? Chrome tab, send message, tab ID, message, request, message, request.message, runtime on message, add listener. Why is that not going? Oh, let's do a return true. No, we don't need a return true. So let's see if we're getting the actual request. Chrome tab, send message, tab ID, message, payload, John. Let's see if we're actually getting it. Console.log, the request, save. Let's go back, close, refresh. It might have to do with the timing. Hello. Oh, there we go, John. And let's see if we got any errors when we did that. Console injected the foreground, injected. Let's go back. Let's go google.com. Hello, John. Any errors? Object, message, change name. So it did show it. I don't know, maybe this is a timing thing. If it shows up again, I'll do some debugging. Let's just do this just to see if it actually works. Go blah. Control S. Let's go back. Refresh. Google.com. Blah. There we go. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Tabs. Yeah, it works. All right, so that's how you send a message to the foreground. Specifically, any tab you have. Should be John or Jack. That's John. Specifically, any the tab the user's viewing, that active tab. So now that we have that going, let's code it so that when we enter that name into the input, we click the change name, send the name to the background, save the name in the background, give me a message saying you saved the name successfully, and then when we go to the pop-up, the options in the foreground, we should have the new name displaying on the pages. So for that, let's get rid of this tabs.sendMessage. Let's get rid of this onMessageListener, and we're just going to work with the runtime send message. Let's work with the, the input, they click the button. So CE button, add event listener, listen for a click. We don't need the event object. And we're just going to send a message to the back end with the name that they put in the field. So this message will be change name. And we'll add a payload. And it's just going to be the input value. So CE input. .value, that's the name. We're expecting a response of success, a message of success saying I successfully saved it on the back end. So name inner HTML. We're not going to send the name back because we already sent it to them, so we know where the name is. We're going to do a CE input .value for the inner HTML. So let's capture this message on the back end communication tree. Control S. We'll go right here. We'll do an else. We'll do an if, we'll do request.message is equal to, we're looking for a get name. And one thing here, so Chrome, storage, local, set. I'm going to set the name to the name that came in, and that would be in the request.payload. There we go. And if successful, well, let's code for the error first. If there is a Chrome runtime last error, we're going to send a response of message fail, and return. Let me scroll up just a bit. If not, we're going to send our response of what are you expecting? Just a message of success. Message of success. And because we're accessing the SUCCESS, we're accessing the local storage with that API. That's asynchronous. We need to do a return true right here to keep the message line open. All right, so we enter the name. We click on the button. We send the name to the backend. The backend takes the name, stores it in the storage. If there's an error, give me a fail so we don't change the name on screen. If there's no error, give me a message of success. If there's a message of success, change the name on screen. So Control S that. Let's go back here. Refresh. Let's go here. Let's go to google.com. Hello name. And let's go with, you know what I didn't do? That initial logic. Let me grab that. I need that initial logic. We'll take it from the options. Copy, close, Control B, right here. Control V. And so whenever the foreground script runs up, it gets the name from the back end. So that would be CE name. Delete, CE underscore name. Input response dot payload. Good. Save. Close. Home stretch. Refresh. Let's go here. Google. That's Hello Jack. That's Hello Jack. Right click options. Hello Jack. Let's change it to, I don't know, burner. Let's click change name. And we are getting an error. What are we not getting? Right click console, message port closed before ending. Cannot read probably message of undefined. Why is that? Response, Chrome. Runtime send message. Payload, message. Request.message is get name. Oh, excuse me. That should not be get. That should be change. There we go. Save. Go back. Refresh. Google.com. Hi Jack. Perfect. Let's go burner. Let's go change name. There we go. Hello burner. We left click here for the pop-up. We get hello burner. Right click options. For the options, hello burner. And so there you have it. What did we do for this video? I don't know how long this video was. Probably 40 plus minutes. But you guys got a pretty good idea of how a Chrome extension works. The fundamentals, the 5 key components. We have the manifest file. It's like your ledger, your name, description, version, where to find the other components, icons, permissions, what you want the Chrome extension to do, and what you want it to do too. So it's the manifest file with the background, which is like your central hub or your back end of your full stack web app. All the logic gets done here. It's a service worker, so there's no... You could absolutely have state outside right here. It's just not going to be saved the next time this thing spins up or activates. So you can use temporary state outside of the confines of a local storage, but it is a service worker, so it installs default state. And then if you want to manage the state to be persistent, you need to use the local storage. This is the main difference, or one of the main differences, between Manifest version 3 and Manifest version 2. That's the background. We explored the pop-up, which is just an HTML page. You have to attach your scripts. You cannot do inline scripts. You can attach or do inline CSS. Same thing for the options. And then we explored the most complicated component, which is the foreground. We inject the foreground using the background once the foreground's injected into the user's page that they're viewing. In this case, we worked with google.com in this lesson. We have full access to their DOM, so we can manipulate their components as well as add our own HTML. And then we went through communication line, communicating from the front end, the options, the pop-up, the foreground, to the back end, the background script, and then from the back end, the background script to the front end, the foreground script. And so that's going to be it for the video. Leave a like. It helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And I'll see you guys in the next one.